When we think about algebra, I feel like this is a common conception about what people think and how people respond in this particular situation. So, why it is important for kids today to learn algebra? And the response here is, I had to learn algebra, and so do you. That's not really meaningful to you. If that was the answer that I gave you today about why you were learning algebra, show me on a scale of 0 to 5 how motivated you would be to learn algebra. Okay, so I'm seeing a lot of answers that are showing me that it's not particularly motivating to say, you're learning it because I learned it. Get over it. Okay, that's not very useful. So when I think about algebra, there's a couple different ways I think about learning algebra and why we learn algebra. One is this particular picture right here. It says algebra is weightlifting for the brain. Okay, so we got a little brain here, lifting weights, pumping some iron. All right, looking good. All right, so by weightlifting, it's saying it's making you stronger. It's making your brain stronger. Reality of it is, there are many of you who your motivation is, I want to go into a field in science. I want to be a physicist. I want to be an engineer. I want to be a chemist. I want to be a biologist. I want to do any of these different things. So your motivation is, I absolutely need this for my everyday life and my job. Okay, there are some of you who aren't in that particular position. In fact, you're already saying to yourself, that's not what I want to do. I want to be an artist. I want to be a writer. I want to be a teacher. Not all of these people tend to use algebra in their everyday job. However, no matter what you do, no matter what your job is, you're going to be interacting within an organization, within a group of people. You're going to run into problems, and you're going to have to solve those problems. So I call algebra weightlifting for your brain because the most efficient way and the most accepted way to solve problems is through a logical process of thinking through the steps to solve the problem. It's interesting, I just had this conversation with my fiance last night. She was talking about her interactions with some of her lab mates about this microscope that is not working properly. And they don't have a whole lot of technical knowledge about the microscope. And some of the people that she's working with just kind of say, oh, it's broken, and that's as far as they get. She asked them, how can we fix this? Their answer is, in a sense, it's broken. Now, some of the other people she works with, they don't have a lot of technical knowledge about the microscope, but they say, you know, let's think about this. What could the possible problems be? And then they think to themselves and they say, here are some steps or things that we can do to figure out which of these possible problems it is. That's kind of like algebra. Algebra is a lot like that. It's about thinking about the different pieces, thinking about the rules, thinking about the logic, and then moving towards a solution. That's all algebra is. Now, when you're doing it with math, that's going to help you think through those processes. So no matter what job you do, your boss or whoever is working with you on a daily basis is going to benefit from the fact that you can think through a process, you can take the rules that are given to you, and you can think logically through those rules how to make a solution to whatever problems you're running into in your work. Yes, Brandon?
Is your fiance a scientist?
My fiance is a scientist. She works she's currently a research biologist getting her PhD. So hopefully everybody in this room will have a paycheck average appropriate at the end of the year, and we will go visit her and her lab at Cal. Crossing our fingers. But, I don't know. We talked about paychecks yesterday. Some of us are really killing our paycheck averages in week 3. So hopefully we can all get there. All right. So those are a couple different reasons. Now, here's a third reason why, algebra can be so important is, no matter what your job is, there's still the rest of the real world. Yes, there's still the rest of the real world that you live with. So I think about things that happen in an everyday. I think about my car and me driving to and from work. I do this every day. And so a lot of times when you're talking about your car, you're always talking about gas. Gas takes gas to get cars going, for the most part. That's changing, but mileage that's how much miles per gallon your car gets. In other words, it's kind of this ratio here, miles per gallon, and miles and gallons. These are kind of like variables, M, G, and we'll call this, how about just N. So, in my daily life, I may end up in the situation where I'm looking at my gas tank and I'm saying that I have about 4 gallons left of gas. I know my car gets about 20 miles per gallon. I've got to get to and from work. Do I have enough gas to make it? Well, I can figure this out. I can use this equation. I can multiply by 4 over 1 times 4 over 1. That's going to give me 80 M. M is equal to 80. I can get 80 miles. Fortunately, I don't live 80 miles away. I don't even live 40 miles away. So in this particular situation, I'm doing this algebra in my head, but I'm saying I can make it to work and back. I don't have to fill up for gas today. Good. The situation could end up very differently. One way that we think about our car, and one way that once you guys get a car, you'll want to be checking in with your car and always knowing, hey, how is my car doing? Is my car doing well or not? You'll do this every time you get to the gas tank. You'll say, on this tank of gas, I went 320 miles. I put in 16 gallons of gas. What was my gas mileage? Well, here we can solve it. We get that my gas mileage was 20 miles per gallon. Now, if you do this and you get 20 miles per gallon one week, 21 miles per gallon the next week, 20 miles per gallon the next week, maybe 19 miles per gallon the next week, and then all of a sudden you get 12 miles per gallon, that's going to tell you something's wrong with my car. Another way that I use this particular algebra in everyday life. So, reality of it is, I've just given you 3 excellent reasons why you're learning algebra. Number 1, there are uses for it in the real world. Number 2, even if you don't have a job that requires you to use algebra, the algebra rules and logic and process is going to make you think through problems and find solutions better. Number 3, if you want to be a scientist, you want to be a business person, you want to do one of those things that really requires a lot of algebra in your job, you're obviously going to need to know algebra. So, what I want you to be thinking about right now is you have this first question that's asked to you. It says, what is algebra and why do we learn it? Well, algebra is a way of logically thinking through the rules of math to find a solution. You don't even necessarily need to write it down in those exact words. The question I'm more interested about is for you to write down why you are learning algebra. All 3 of those things won't necessarily apply to you. If you already know, I'm not going to be a scientist, then you don't need to write down because I'm going to need algebra in my daily job. That's fine. So, you need to think about, why are you learning algebra? Are you learning algebra for the benefits in the real world? Are you learning algebra for the benefits in how you think? Are you looking for it in benefits to whatever? One of those 3 reasons. You write down the reason about why you have decided your motivation for the next 2 months Why are you learning algebra? Write it down. I will have people share theirs, yes. So in order for us to go through this unit in algebra, we have to have some idea about some various different vocabulary terms. So we're looking here at the word equation. We have to know what an equation is. So every time I use this word in class, we have a specific understanding about what that means. Now, a lot of us have preconceptions about what the word equation means. Some of those preconceptions are good. Some of those preconceptions are bad. So let's talk about it. What do we already know about equations? What would you already tell me about equations? Psalm.
Equation is like a number sentence that can be solved.
A number sentence that can be solved. So that's definitely a very common definition for people to walk in their room with. And there are some things that I agree with about that. And there are some things that I don't agree with about that. Monia.
It has an equal sign at the end.
Has an equal sign at the end. I totally agree with that part about the equal sign. I have some possible disagreements with the at the end part. Matthew.
Two numbers that are like something that's trying to be solved, like multiple numbers or how many numbers, like one.
So that word solve also kind of weirds me out about this particular definition, but it's also very common for you to come into my room with that idea in your brain, that equations always have to be something that's solved.
Yeah, that's what
Tufa.
Like there's gonna be an answer at the end. The expression you're gonna figure out some part of the expression.
Okay, so basically what I'm hearing are a bunch of over-specified definitions of an equation. You're getting too specific. You're over-narrowing your ideas about what an equation are. Here are some examples of equations. So this is the one that most of you have in your brains. That doesn't seem unusual to any of you. That's an equation. This is an equation. Let's notice a couple things about this equation that are somewhat counter to some of the other things that I said. Kip, yes or Kip, no. Would you say this equation needs to be solved? Kip, yes or Kip, no. Would you say this equation needs to be solved? So waiting for some participants here. Kip, yes or Kip, no. Is this equation needing to be solved? Okay, some of you are saying yes and some of you are saying no. That may depend on your definition of solving, which is why I don't like to use the word solving when I'm talking about the definition of an equation. Notice there are also not variables in this equation. Some of you have an idea in your brain that an equation must have a variable in it. There's no variable here. There's no need for an equation to have a variable. All an equation is really saying, and this is our definition of an equation. This is why I wanted to counteract some of those ideas that we already had in our head. An equation is just two expressions that are equal. It's just two expressions that are equal. It's a number sentence that uses an equal sign to tell us that two expressions have the same value. So, we don't know what x is here, but we know whatever x is, it better make this expression have the same value as 10. 3 plus 1. We know that expression has the same value as this expression, 2 plus 2. It's all an equal sign is telling us. The two expressions on the two sides have the same value. Put your legs down. Put your legs down. All right, thinking about expressions. You have to meet the same expectations. Thinking about expressions. What do we already know about expressions? We have some ideas about expressions in our head already. Adolfo. They don't need equal signs. Okay? Expressions don't need equal signs. How are they the same as equations? Triana. They have numbers. So much like equations, expressions are number sentences. And we've put together those two ideas. That's my exact definition. Expressions are number sentences. What do your notes look like right now? Are number sentences that express a value. No equal sign. So, somebody give me an example of an expression. Alvin. 4x. Very basic expression, yes. 5y. Also a very basic example of an expression. So these are our examples. Adolfo. 5x plus 7y. Also an expression. How about some more